Between 1978 and 1990, Andrei Chikatilo murdered dozens of victims across the Soviet Union. Known as the Butcher of Rostov, his crimes were marked by a level of brutality that shocked the nation and challenged the state's internal security. His movement over that 12-year window is a study in escalation. Starting in the Rostov region, the murders spread across multiple republics, with the body count rising steadily while law enforcement struggled to mount a unified response. This evasion occurred within one of the most surveilled societies in history. The Soviet state maintained an intricate system of police presence, travel restrictions, and social control designed to monitor every aspect of public life. The detectives tasked with stopping the killings were hindered by the very apparatus they served. They weren't just hunting a cunning predator. They were fighting a bureaucracy that viewed its own protocols as infallible. The Chikatilo case reveals a specific horror: how a state's structural rigidity and refusal to adapt to new evidence provided the perfect cover for a killer to operate for over a decade. Soviet ideology maintained a strict narrative about violent crime. State doctrine officially classified serial killers as a symptom of Western moral decay, a phenomenon that supposedly could not exist in a communist society. This refusal to acknowledge the reality of serial murder prevented the formation of centralized task forces. Instead, isolated local precincts were forced to investigate linked horrific crimes as unrelated, one-off incidents. The police force functioned within a top-down hierarchy, where questioning the official party line was seen as political insubordination. Demanding resources for a capitalist type of crime was a risk many investigators were unwilling to take. Furthermore, local authorities were pressured to meet regional safety quotas. To maintain the illusion of socialist harmony, officials frequently suppressed or manipulated violent crime data, obscuring the patterns that would have pointed to a single killer. By prioritizing ideological optics over objective forensic evidence, the Soviet state effectively blinded its own investigators from the start. Even as some investigators began to link the regional murders, they hit a specific scientific failure that would derail the case for years. This was the blood type paradox. Outdated Soviet forensic tests incorrectly determined that the killer's blood type did not match the seminal fluid found at the crime scenes. This laboratory error allowed Chikatilo to be arrested, interrogated, and then released. Because his personal blood test didn't match the flawed profile generated by the state lab, he was officially cleared of suspicion. This data error redirected the investigation for years. Detectives wasted thousands of man-hours searching for a biological profile that existed only in their flawed records, while Chikatilo continued to move freely. The institutional refusal to double-check their methods or acknowledge laboratory mistakes gave the killer an impenetrable alibi. The investigation only gained momentum when the lead detectives decided to abandon standard Soviet police doctrine. They pivoted to a covert strategy, bypassing their own bureaucratic superiors to share case files across regional borders, they built their own unofficial network of information. They also adopted psychological profiling, a technique previously dismissed as Western pseudoscience. They began looking at the killer's behavior rather than just biological markers. Using these new methods, investigators were finally able to map his hunting patterns. They narrowed their focus to the transit hubs and railway stations, specifically around the city of Rostov. The hunt succeeded only when the detectives stopped trusting the system and started relying on the evidence the system told them to ignore. In 1990, Chikatilo was finally arrested after being spotted by an officer conducting targeted surveillance at a train station. The arrest was the direct result of the detective's rogue use of profiling and localized monitoring. His trial and confession shattered the public's belief in the state's narrative of societal perfection. The reality of his crimes forced a nationwide reckoning with the failures of the police apparatus. The international community watched as the details of the 12-year investigation were revealed, exposing the deep systemic weaknesses of a law enforcement agency governed by politics rather than facts. Chikatilo's capture coincided with the final months of the Soviet Union. The same rigid, centralized command structures that had protected him were being dismantled across the collapsing state. The case demonstrated that prioritizing ideological optics over forensic reality creates a sanctuary for the very violence the state claims to have eradicated.